We're going to be taking a look at some negative exponents, and we're going to analyze and study how to turn those negative exponents into positive exponents. I need to advise you that before you begin this lesson, you need to have a very firm grasp of how exponents work. You need to have a very firm grasp as to how to convert decimals into fractions and fractions into decimals. So that may be something you need to go back and review before you start this. Here is a negative exponent. It is 10 to the negative 5. And our job now is to take that negative exponent and transform it into a positive exponent. To do that, you need to follow this step. Number one, you need to be aware that this exponent right now is a numerator, which means there is a denominator below it. It is a 1. However, we do not show this 1. We don't show the denominator because anything that is 1, we choose not to show in the case of a denominator or any situation like that. So what we do here is we want to make sure that this guy here, he flunks and plunks down to the layer below. And when he does that, he falls down here. Remember, I'm not going to show that 1. And now instead of a negative 5, he becomes a positive 5. So when he switches layers, he goes from the top to the bottom. He becomes a positive. His sign reverses. Now, we can't leave this blank. We need to show it as a numerator. We need to show the number 1 as a numerator. That's important. Don't do this. Do this. Now we're going to be transforming these numbers into exponents. And this is going to build on the concept I'm trying to teach you here with negative exponents. If I show you the number 100, the exponential form of 100 is going to be 10 times 10. We understand that 10 times 10 is 100. And so that is the number 10 to the power of 2. 10 to the power of 2. Now the number 10 on its own is just 10 to the power of 1 because we only have one 10. It's not being multiplied with anything. It's just a 10 standing on its own. However, the number 1 as an exponent is 1 to the 1. That is correct. But there is another form. You can write 10 to the 0 is 1. In fact, anything to the power of 0 is going to make the number 1. I can write 2 to the power of 0, and that likewise becomes 1. Anything to the power of 0 is 1. 1 over 10 as an exponent in exponential form is going to be just 1 over 10. 1 over 10 to the power of 1. And that's enough for that. 1 over 100 is going to be 1 over 10 squared. 1 over 10 to the power of 2. Remember what I said about turning positive exponents and negative exponents and how to flip the sign. You need to be able to take that number and put it at another level. So if it's a denominator, put it as a numerator, then the sign flips. So equivalent to 1 over 10 to the 1 would be, put them on the top. We're going to get 10 to the negative 1. And on the bottom here is going to be a 1. It's going to look like this, right? Because now it's empty on the bottom. We should put a 1 there. However, we choose not to show it if it's a denominator. This is good enough. Now for this one, 1 over 10 squared, that'll become 10 to the negative 2 over 1, which we will not show. 49. How do we represent 49 in exponential form? Well, 7 times 7 is 49, so that's 7 to the power of 2. 7 to the power of 2 is 49. 7 as a standard form, transformed into exponential form, will just be 7 to the 1. That is 7. How do you make 1? Remember, anything to the power of 0 is going to be 1. We can say 7 to the 0 is 1. We can say 10 to the 0 is 1. We can even say 1 to the 0 is 1, or just even 1 to the 1 is 1, right? 1 on its own is just 1. 1 over 7 now, what does that become in exponential form? One way of showing it is to go 1 over 7 to the power of 1. That would be fair. If you wanted to bump that 7 to the 1 from a denominator to a numerator, then the exponent sign will flip. It'll look like this. Bump him to the top, he becomes 7 to the negative 1, and on the denominator, we'll just leave it blank. He is now a numerator. He is a negative 1. The 41 over 49 will become 1 over 7 to the power of 2. That's 1 over 49. We did it right here. 49 is 7 squared. And if we bumped it to the top, it would become 7 to the power of negative 2 over 1, which again we choose not to show. Now a little bit more advanced. We're going to put this all together, all the stuff we've just learned. Write 1 over 1,000 as a positive exponent, and then we're going to write it as a negative exponent. As a positive exponent, it will look like this. 1,000 is what? 10 times 10 times 10. That's 1,000. So we can show that as 1 over 10 times 10 times 10, which is equal to 1 over 10 to the third. And it asks us to leave it as a positive exponent, and right now it is a positive exponent. The 3 is a positive exponent. But if we chose to write 1 over 1,000 as a negative exponent, then it will look like this. 1 over 10 to the third. Okay, so all the steps remain the same. This is 1 over 10 to the third. That's 1,000. And then we need to bump this entire power at the bottom. Bump it up to the numerator. And then he becomes 10 to the negative third power. Writing decimals as exponents is also simple if you know how to turn decimals into fractions. You see here the place values are the first value after the decimal is the tenths. And then we've got the hundredths. So we have right now 1 out of 100. And we know that 100 is 10 times 10. And we know that 10 times 10 is 10 to the power of 2. And now it's a positive exponent. We are done this question. Write 0.01 as a negative exponent. All the steps remain the same. It's going to eventually look like 1 over 10 to the power of 2. But to make it a negative exponent, we need to bump the denominator here. Since it's a denominator, the exponent's in the denominator, we need to bump him up to the numerator. And then he becomes 10 to the negative 2 over 1, which we will just leave the way it is right now. Now it's your turn to practice these before you do your online quiz. Write the following numbers as positive exponents, and then these ones here, write the following numbers as negative exponents. Go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to keep talking now. I'm going to assume you have unpaused it. 10 to the negative third as a positive exponent will be 1 over 10 to the positive 3, like that. Yes, we got that one. 1 over 10 to the positive 3. It's your choice if you want to leave the positive sign. I'm going to put it in this one. 10 to the negative 6 should have become 1 over 10 to the positive 6. Like that. So those two are equal. They are equivalent. The numerator drops to the denominator and he becomes positive. Yes, we got that. 1 over 10 squared. Now we got to turn these into negative exponents. We'll just take this denominator, bump him to the numerator, and he becomes 10 to the negative 2. Brilliant. 10 to the positive 2. Oh no, we need to make him into a negative exponent. That's what it says. So we're going to take him and we're going to drop him now to the denominator. And then he will become 1 over 10 to the negative 2. And then this question here, 1 over 10,000, a little bit more involved because 10,000 isn't an exponent. We need to convert it. Converting it will become 1 over 10. Now let's see, 10,000 is 10 times 10 is 100. Times 10 is 1,000. Times 10 is 10,000. That's 4 tens. We will write a 4. And we need a negative exponent, so we'll bump that denominator back up to the top, and then it'll become 10 to the negative 4 over 1. I'll put it in this one here since I haven't done it in all the others. This would be okay as well. 2 more questions. Write the following numbers as decimals first, and then as a fraction. Go ahead and do that. Assuming you did that, we have 10 to the negative 4. Convert it to a decimal. Now, how do we do that? How do we take this and convert it to a decimal? Well, we could take this number and turn it into a positive exponent. We can turn him into 1 over 10 to the 4th. Here, let's clean that up a little bit. Let's turn this into that. We're going to do this. We're going to write 1 over 10 to the positive 4. He's going to fall. And we know 10 to the 4 is, let's see, 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000, times 10 is 10,000. 1 over 10,000 is, let's see, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. Yes, we got it. Put the 1 in the right spot, the 10,000th spot. 10 to the negative 1 as a now look, this last question, we got the decimal and we got the fraction. We did them both. This one, let's turn it to a fraction first. 1 over 10 to the positive 1 is our fraction. 1 over 10 is what it becomes. As a decimal, let's see, the 1 has to be in the 10th spot. That's decimal 1. Yes, that's how you do this. We got this one and we got the fraction. Write the following numbers as positive and negative exponents. These two are a little bit at our level. This one's a little bit more advanced. See if you can do all three of them. Okay, checking our answers over. This is going to be, let's see here. We want a positive and a negative exponent. So we need to take this. Let's turn it over 1. Now, this is 1 over tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So it's 1 over 1,000. And we know that 1,000 is 10 to the third. 10 times 10 times 10. And we know that that's our positive exponent. As a negative exponent, it's just going to be 10 to the negative 3 on the top. Very good. We've got our positive exponent. We've got our negative exponent. We've even got our fraction. This one's going to be tenths. Count with me. Hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths. We've got 1 over 100,000, baby. 1 over 100,000. That's going to be 1 over, let's see, count. 10 times 10 is 100 times 10 is 1,000. 10,000, 100,000. Right, that's 5 tens. We've got a 5. I hope you see the pattern with the number of zeros and the number on the exponent. We've got our positive exponent. Let's turn it to negative by bumping it to the top. Brilliant. We've got this one too. And the last one. Look. Tenths, hundredths. The 2 over 100. We're going to turn that into 2 over 10 to the power of 2, because that's 100. And that's our positive exponent. How about the negative exponent? Yeah. 2 times 10. All right, let me erase that. Let me squeeze it in. Let's put it here. We're going to write 2 stays on the top. We're going to take this denominator, bump them up, put them beside the 2. 10 to the negative 2. Yes, that's the answer.